I see the future of Bitcoin mining from like a retail perspective a lot stronger because a lot of the big players are now chasing, the new pretty girl, on the block, basically. It's actually the opposite now. It's not as many Bitcoiners getting into mining. It's more real estate professionals, family offices, high net worth individuals. I'm Nick Garland. I'm COO of Simple Mining. We're a Bitcoin mining hosting provider based in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Got into Bitcoin. I was actually a professional baseball player, came home from an off season, and my brother actually introduced me to Bitcoin and we went down the rabbit hole. I definitely think we're kind of in that zone where there is a greater acceptance of Bitcoin, of mining, just in general, as you're looking, all the way from somebody just buying Bitcoin and like understanding what that is to buy and hold it versus, on a larger scale, building a $1 million site. Hashrate's not going to come on as quickly because some of the existing infrastructure and newer capacity that's going to come online is going to move to AI, and just other data centers. And with that being said, the Bitcoin network's not going to be able to grow as fast due to that.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Robin.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on. Before we get started with all the topics, maybe give us a brief overview of who you are and especially always interesting why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, actually, I'm Nick Garland. I'm COO of Simple Mining. We're a Bitcoin mining hosting provider based in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I've been in business about 5 years. I actually started as one of our first clients and then shortly joined after as one of our first employees, and been a lot of fun building this business and got into Bitcoin. I was actually a professional baseball player, wasn't making a lot of money. So when you're in the locker room, there's a lot of talk about, what to invest in, and people are buying penny stocks or different coins and whatnot. And came home from an off season, and my brother actually introduced me to Bitcoin, and we went down the rabbit hole and met Adam, who runs our company now. He's our CEO, and bought some miners, and ever since then kind of just got orange pilled and that's kind of my journey into Bitcoin. So I think like most people, I kind of started, dabbling in different coins and things I shouldn't have been, trying to make a quick buck, and but we ended up here. So yeah.
Interesting. Why were you drawn to like Bitcoin mining? It's like something that you thought like you want to have some income off your Bitcoin, or like why you got to be a customer of Simple Mining?
It started as a tax play, actually. So at the time in 2021, I believe, there was 100% bonus depreciation, which is available now as well with the big, beautiful bill that Trump passed a few months ago. So for us, it was more of a tax play, just to write off some income. And it was a way to I saw it more of a business versus just me buying spot. I was able to open an LLC and operate as a business, which is a little more interesting to me as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, basically. So, yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. And then it's also interesting becoming an employee with the company that you just being a customer on there. But in general, like why is Bitcoin mining interesting for you? Like what was the interest that you thought like Bitcoin mining might be interesting for you?
In 2021, this would have been, I believe in 21 or 22, this would have been when the China ban happened, where China banned Bitcoin mining, and you had a lot of interest from US companies. And that's kind of when this whole shift in Hashrate happened from, overseas, and really came to the US. So at the time, mining looked pretty attractive from a profitability standpoint. Obviously at that time, machines were very overpriced. But it was a newer thing, and I was kind of always chasing newer things. And I was always looking for the next thing. And at the time, it seemed like the next thing for me. So the tax deduction was attractive, as well as the ability, from the way I saw it, to accumulate Bitcoin at a discount. With kind of a fixed input cost into my electricity, I can accumulate more Bitcoin than my electricity cost versus just dollar cost averaging on an exchange like Coinbase or River. So.
Is it still true now, 2025, the same thesis you had back then?
Yeah, it's the same. It's impossible to say over a long enough time horizon, which will mine more mining or, buying Bitcoin, which will accumulate more Bitcoin. But when you look at mining specifically, obviously you have your CapEx into the equipment. But if you eliminate that, just for the purpose of this example, you are accumulating Bitcoin at a discount, as long as you have a low enough electricity rate and you're mining with some of the newer generation equipment. You are accumulating that Bitcoin at a discount in the current market. And if you are bullish on Bitcoin appreciating over time, really faster than new network hash rate growth, then you're in a position for accumulating that Bitcoin at a discount over time. So,
wait, so like what you're saying is, if you think that Bitcoin will appreciate faster than the hash rate appreciates, or like what were you saying there?
Yeah, so network, I'm sure you're on Twitter and a lot of your viewers are on Twitter, and you see network hash rate hits all-time highs every other day. And network hash rate is going to continue to hit all-time highs forever. There's new capacity coming online every day. But there's kind of diminishing returns on network hash rate over time, where the network cannot increase at the same rate as it has in the past. There's a lot of infrastructure required. It's the largest computer network in the world. So to double capacity overnight is not very easy. We just stood up a 50 megawatt site in Iowa. Actually, it's the largest Bitcoin mining site in Iowa. That took us 12 months to build. It's a $20 million investment on the infrastructure, not the machines, just the infrastructure to build it. And that project, that 50 megawatts makes up, 15, 20 basis points of the entire Bitcoin network. So that one singular project, the scale of it makes up a very, very small fraction. And the point I'm getting at is, if you think Bitcoin price will continue to increase, in the short term and long term, faster than that network hash rate growth over time, then that's kind of the arbitrage opportunity that you're trying to take advantage of. So if Bitcoin price were to double tomorrow, theoretically, and Simple Mining and every other public company and private company wanted to plug in as many ASICs as possible, it would take 12 to 24 months for that capacity to come online, right? There's only so much capacity. You have to build a substation. You have to, there's chip constraints. There's energy constraints. We're competing with AI data centers for the same capacity. It's not as easy to add capacity at this point in time. So comparatively to 2021, 2022, there's a lot of capacity coming online very quickly. And at this point in time, if you're entering mining and you believe the price of Bitcoin is going to continue to go higher, that is kind of the arbitrage opportunity that you're trying to take advantage of. If you think price will appreciate faster than network hash rate growth. I can show a chart, but if you look at network hash rate growth from 2012 to 2016, for example, the Bitcoin network grew by 5.8 million%. Okay. If you look at the last 4 years, the Bitcoin network's only grown by about 500 or 600%. So over time, the network continues to go up, but it plateaus. And there's diminishing returns from a percentage standpoint over time, which allows people mining now to, kind of have a more profitable business mining for a longer period of time, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and it's ambitious. Do you have that chart? Like, if you want, you can either send it to me and I'll put it up, or you can put it up. I think it could be interesting.
Say that one more time. Sorry.
You have that chart you were talking about? Because sure. I would love to put it up.
I got to type on my keyboard, and then you said it makes a lot of noise, but.
No, you're good.
Give me a second. Do you want me to send it to you? How do you want me? You want me to share my screen, or?
I'll just share your screen. Yes.
Tell me if you can see.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. So this is a little outdated. I'm getting a bad feed. Okay. This is a little outdated. This is from April of this year, but it's still relevant. So this kind of looks at just network hash rate growth over time. So from 2012 to 2016, you see this 5.8 million% growth. The next 4 years, you see about 8,000% growth. The next 4 years, about 500%. Again, this is a little outdated. This number's a little higher now because it's from 6 months ago. But you see this chart and how, we kind of have exponential growth in 2012. If you go back to 2012 and just for example, let's say there was one guy mining with, 10 CPUs or GPUs in his garage. Okay. It would have been very easy for you or for me to plug in 10 computers and double the Bitcoin network, right? At this point in time, to double the Bitcoin network, you would need, just a tremendous amount of infrastructure and capacity to be able to do that. It's not really feasible. And that's kind of the bottleneck that we're running into here, where this line here cannot just go straight up forever, at least vertically. It'll continue to trend this way over time, but it's going to be, from a percentage standpoint, there'll be smaller and smaller increases over time.
Interesting. But it it's confusing because like back in the day with like 2012, like I'm not sure because I haven't been in Bitcoin at that point, but then you could have mined Bitcoin just like with almost everything with your computer running next to it. But yeah, I guess like it was more profitable to do it long term still, but it was probably not profitable in that very moment.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact profitability was in 2012, but there were also less miners. The block reward was much higher at that point in time. So, yeah, a lot of variables. I don't have all the information in front of me to comment on that, but I think mining is always profitable for somebody somewhere, regardless of price. Based on their energy costs, based on the efficiency of the equipment they're running. So it's always going to be profitable for somebody as long as the price of Bitcoin's above $0.
Okay, but that's really interesting because I've never looked at that way. Where if you think that Bitcoin will outrun the price of Bitcoin will outrun the future hash rate growth, you have basically the arbitrage that you are mining for that very price already now. And the network needs to have some time to account for the additional expenditure of the network. And so also the difficulty adjustment needs some time to adjust long term. And so you're basically then getting Bitcoin for discount. Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, more or less. I have another chart I can show you. If you're curious, but it's just looking at the profitability of the equipment because I think it's easier to see a visual. But basically, currently, let's say you're mining at 7 or 8 cents per kilowatt hour, which is going to be the average rate in the U.S. for any kind of retail customer. You're going to spend $6 per day roughly on electricity, and that machine's going to output about $14 in Bitcoin, let's say. So a $6 input's getting you twice as much Bitcoin versus the same dollar cost average in Coinbase or Gemini or Kraken or whatever exchange anybody uses. A $6 input's only getting you $6 in Bitcoin on that exchange, minus any fees and their spread and so on and so forth. And really, when you're looking at mining, if Bitcoin tomorrow, the US announces a strategic reserve and buys 1 million Bitcoin, I don't know, something crazy happens, and Bitcoin goes to $200,000 tomorrow, you still have that fixed input cost of $6 in electricity that never changes. And now instead of $14 per day, you get $28 per day in that example, versus the exchange, that same $6 input is still only getting you $6 of Bitcoin. So with mining, yes, if you think the price will go higher, and if it does go higher, that is really the bullish component of mining versus buying spot. It's maybe a bad analogy, but I compare it to like a call option to a certain extent. It's a potential higher multiple in buying spot. If you have a call option on a stock or Bitcoin, you're ultimately looking for a higher return on just buying the underlying asset itself within a certain time period, right? So
that's super interesting. Do you have is there an active, because like Bitcoin mining is something physical, which you have to transfer around the space, and like there's something physical on it. Is there, because of that, a bigger impact of politics, of like what the current president is doing, what the current like laws in there? You talked before about the bonus appreciation, but is there like the trade war, like the big beautiful bill, I think it's called. I always love those names, and other things in politics. How much of an impact does it really have on like the profitability and like the mining itself?
Yeah, I think obviously anytime you have a president of the United States talking about Bitcoin, it's probably a good thing for the asset class, whether it's good news or bad news. I think just any publicity around Bitcoin, in my opinion, is good publicity because it starts conversations for good or for bad. So I think that's been a benefit. You've seen the fastest growing ETF in history in the Bitcoin ETF. You've seen the president and his sons, spinning up a mining company or creating different tokens or, buying Bitcoin or whatever it might be. So there's having the highest level of government speaking about Bitcoin is definitely a net positive. I think as it relates to like the actual physicality of mining, there's different challenges in standing up these mining sites, which most people probably don't think about or see, but you see a lot of misleading media articles about, Bitcoin mining is destroying the environment, or, it's raising our taxes, or it's doing this or it's doing that. None of those things are really true. So what we try to do is we try to go, in small town Iowa, we're dealing with towns of, 500 or 1,000 people sometimes. And we have to go in and really sell what we're doing to the community, because we want to be a good neighbor. And when we go into these communities, we basically, we try to hire all the local electricians, earthwork guys, engineers, so on and so forth, where we can bring a lot of business to that community, and then actually hire all of our technicians and repair techs and whatnot within that community. So we can actually bring a lot of good jobs to small rural Iowa. So it's a good win-win relationship. And then we effectively become the biggest customer for the utility company. So it's just a win-win all around. And as far as the education side, there are a lot of misconceptions, in a lot of these rural towns where, these machines are emitting CO2, and you see jokes on Twitter and different things like that. But I think we come in and try to educate. And obviously, again, when you have the president or you have BlackRock or you have very large companies getting exposure to Bitcoin, it makes it easier to say, hey, this is a real thing. It's not going anywhere. And it kind of helps us. It's a little easier for us to expand now. We were going to utility companies in 2021. It was very, very difficult to say, hey, we're building a Bitcoin mining site. And we wouldn't even say that. We'd say we're building a data center, because that's what we're doing. But at some point in time, we have to tell the utility company it's a Bitcoin mining site. And at that point in time, we're getting doors shut in our face, or people are hanging up the phone, they're cursing us out. And these things happen to everybody because they want nothing to do with it. And it's more of just, we have to really come in and educate. And at this point in time in 2025, I'm sure, as you're seeing as well with family and friends who probably talk about Bitcoin more, it's a lot more understood at this point in time, where there's less educating we have to do because it is more in the mainstream media. So I think overall it's been a net positive when you have people like the president and higher government ranking officials discussing it.
So wait, there's utility companies that basically sell you energy that say, I don't want to have to do anything with Bitcoin mining companies. So like they're just saying no to a customer because the reason what they're using the electricity for.
Correct. Yeah, it sounds like communism, I guess. But yeah, it's there's a lot of different factors. I mean, you have the community. We have to go through board approvals and, sometimes city councils where we have to go and speak in front of hundreds of people, who, think of like the movies with people with pitchforks, more or less. And it's, what you guys are going to destroy our town. You're going to do this. Then we kind of come in very delicately and say, okay, this is actually what's happening. This is what these machines are doing. One of the big things is the noise of the equipment. So generally that's a main factor. So it's not even if the utility company is on board with us, we have to get the city approvals. And this is every mining company in the US, and I'm sure abroad. But some of these sites are close to residential properties, or even if they're in industrial parks, it's still a concern for the community because they don't know what it is. So we have to come in and just explain, here's how loud it is, or how loud it really isn't. It's really not, what you see in the media. I mean, actually, a lot of the new sites we're standing up now are called hydro-cooled sites. So they're very quiet. They're below. You can't, if you're standing outside of these containers, it sounds like an air conditioner running. It's not very loud. So a lot of the sites now that we're building are actually quieter, because they're using a liquid to cool the machines instead of being air cooled. So, but we've absolutely been turned away from utilities because we're mining Bitcoin. We've been, turned away from certain jurisdictions because it's Bitcoin, and they just want nothing to do with it. And actually over time, some of those companies that turned us away in 2021, we're now working with, or we're re-engaging conversations because now they're interested, right? We've stood up 10 of these sites in Iowa. And when you have, 4 or 5 different utilities that can, provide referrals and kind of say, hey, they've been a good neighbor and so on and so forth, it's easier for us to expand and continue to grow the business. So
how much does this have to do with just having a bigger business and having the better, the neighbors talking about it, you have some references and stuff like that? Or I always explain the Overton window. For me, there's something bigger going on where Bitcoin is still a career risk to a certain extent. So if you're a CFO of a company, and you bring up Bitcoin in 2013 and you say in 2013, oh, I want to convert all the cash of my business into Bitcoin, you probably get a lot of crazy looks, and you like if you just do it, you probably get fired. And I think in 2030 or 2035 or 2040, whatever the time is, if you are CFO of a publicly traded company and you don't have any strategy when it comes to Bitcoin, the same thing will happen as the guy that had a Bitcoin strategy in 2013. You kind of get laughed out of the room. It's like, oh yeah, like you need a Bitcoin strategy. How can you be a CFO without a Bitcoin strategy? And so there's this like window in time where it's shifting from the one narrative towards the other narrative, where it's like if you're for it in the beginning, you're gonna get laughed out, and then if you are against it in the other time frame, you also kind of get laughed out. And I think we are right in the middle, where it depends where you are in the world and with whom you speak. Some people will laugh you out, some people think you're a genius, depending on who you talk to. Do you feel that as a business, as like setting up mining, talking with the utility companies, engaging with the city council, that this Overton window that I'm talking about, this is actually currently kind of happening? And if it's happening, like where would you say we are in this kind of shift?
Yeah, no, we're definitely seeing it. Having referrals and anything goes a long way. Even some of the local banks we work with, we can go to a new bank and say, hey, we're working with so-and-so, and they're working with us as a Bitcoin mining company. Their ears perk up a little bit, right? And it's like, okay, well, if they're working with you guys, maybe we can, and let's sort through that. So it's not just building the sites, it goes as far as the banking side, as far as, every other aspect of the business. We've been debanked several times. We can't use Stripe, for credit card payments. There's a lot of different things that we can't access. We've been shut down from CRM systems because we're, crypto, quote unquote. So there's been a lot of challenges with that. As far as like building new sites and being in that kind of zone that you're speaking about, the answer is yes, for sure. I mean, having done this a bunch of times and kind of being a homegrown business in Iowa allows us, it's a lot easier for us to go into a small community and talk the talk. And our company's based in Iowa versus big corporate. Big corporate America comes into small town Iowa, they're not going to let them come in, because more or less they're probably not going to be a good neighbor. And, they're not going to want a bunch of people with suit and ties walking into rural Iowa and building a Bitcoin mining site or an AI data center. So we've seen better success just being local, being able to understand, the concerns of the local communities, because that's where our team is based out of and that's where our company is. And I think that plays a major factor in it as well. A lot of these utilities won't even entertain conversations with other companies that are not based in Iowa themselves. So, but yeah, I definitely think we're kind of in that zone where there is a greater acceptance of Bitcoin, of mining, just in general. As you're looking, all the way from somebody just buying Bitcoin and like understanding what that is to buy and hold it versus, on a larger scale, building a $1 million site, and everything that goes into that. So we're definitely seeing it across the board.
That's really interesting. I like that. I like seeing that a lot, because seeing the actual grassroots adoption, there's always those like metrics that don't really say a lot. For example, price or like anything like that. It's like, yeah, more money is in that system and it says something. But actually seeing how people shift their opinions and how they're getting opened up to the idea of Bitcoin and implementing that in their daily life, seeing how people say like, oh yeah, like we have a Bitcoin mining facility in our town. Oh yeah, there's like this Bitcoiner in our company. Like those are the real world touch points that people need to get that Bitcoin is normal. And Bitcoin is here to stay. And I think this is super, super interesting. That's why I always loved from the beginning that Bitcoin mining is a physical thing that's there in the real world, which makes, weirdly enough, Bitcoin, for lack of a better word, touchable. It's like, oh wow, okay, there is Bitcoin mining, like there is this thing going on, and so I think if we wouldn't have that, I mean, then Bitcoin would not succeed anyways, because there's no proof of work, and then like everything is like kind of for nothing. But like it's super important just that it's physical and it's there and you can see it. And so it's a huge value that you're also providing with like doing the local work and like actually building up those facilities. It's something I think Bitcoin is just like, there's this, people come up to me and they're like, oh, like, why should I mine Bitcoin? And there's like one small reason in there, that has nothing to do with yourself or like, oh, it's profitable or anything like that. It's just like, you should, as a Bitcoiner that is so early into this evolution, you should 100% support it in any way, shape, or form that you can. And so, like, not everyone wants to run their S21s at home and have maybe the noise, or like if it breaks down, how to repair it, and all of the drama that comes with it. And so there's like simple mining is a really nice solution for that. But like, anyway, if you can, like, if you already have your own keys in your own, in your own, in your own hands, like you hold your own keys and you run your own node, I think the next step, the logical next step is just like, oh, you should also mine it, and then like connecting it with your own wallet, with your own node and all of that. Like, but mining Bitcoin is one of the sovereignty aspects of Bitcoin that we have to do as early adopters of Bitcoin, as innovators in Bitcoin. And it's most people talk about holding your own keys, but not a lot of people talk about like, oh, you should also mine Bitcoin, which is weird because you can also make money with mining Bitcoin. So that's like, you have an incentive actually to learn about it outside of just supporting the network.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think when we started the company, it was a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, I'm going to support the network. I want to buy a machine and run my own node and all this kind of stuff. And we've seen a pretty big transition in that kind of customer base over the last 12 months, really, where it's actually the opposite now. It's not as many Bitcoiners getting into mining. It's more real estate professionals, family offices, high net worth individuals that they really see it as it's a tax play for a lot of them. And I know, different countries have different laws, but we have there's a lot of family offices in Europe, because I know some of the countries over there, I think Germany or maybe Switzerland, or you would know better than me, but there's different vehicles that people can invest in to take better tax deductions and so on and so forth. So we're seeing it across the board that's kind of, even amongst our competitors, it's really a tax advantaged way. The way I describe mining is it's a tax advantaged way to get exposure to Bitcoin at a discount, is the way that I personally see it at this point in time. And now that discount's not guaranteed forever, but in the current market, you're accumulating Bitcoin at a discount, and you're able to take advantage on the tax side of things by writing off the equipment based on your jurisdiction and your personal situation. But yeah, we've definitely seen a decent shift there over time, where it's not just, hey, I want to secure the network. A lot of people in that camp at this point in time are probably running something on a very, very small scale at home, like those little 1 terahash miners basically, or something of that sort. But we're definitely seeing more of, and I think the industry as a whole is seeing just larger investment into the space, because it's the tax side of things is attracting a much different type of investor at this point in time versus a few years ago. So, and I think you're seeing kind of a maturing of the industry as well. We started the business 4 or 5 years ago. There were a ton of companies. There were 25, 30 competitors. And at this point in time, I'd say, at least in the US, we probably have 2 or 3 competitors, really. Companies that have been here for a long time, I'm sure there's other companies that have just stood up. But over time, any business, you kind of, there's companies that come and go, and then you kind of see over time, it kind of consolidates. The industry is going to continue to consolidate for a lot of different reasons. But we're seeing a pretty good consolidation of the industry at this point in time, where there's really only a few companies offering like hosted mining for the retail customer, and providing a high level service. In my opinion, that'll continue to consolidate down into like really 1 or 2, I think, over the next few years, just as the industry continues to matures, and alongside some other factors that we can get into. But
yeah, what is like? I've never heard that. But like, why is it consolidating? Like why? Like it can make sense in the beginning that it's like there's only a few, and then like people say like, oh, like that's an interesting business model. Then a lot of them are there, and of course, like a lot of them go out of business. As like with I think everything long term. I mean, I guess there's some like bigger thing going on in every industry where at first a lot of companies try it out and then it kind of consolidates towards like 1, 2 major players. The same is like even for like phones or like anything that we're using, like there's usually like not like 50 competitors. But like with that kind of thing, I thought like that there might be, I thought we are still like earlier in the space where we have a lot of like competitors.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like just broadly speaking, and then I'll get a little more specific, but there's companies who may just mismanage things. They may have a lot of debt. They may, uh, not do right by their customers, so on and so forth, right? There's a million reasons why a company can go out of business or see kind of diminishing returns over time. But I think it's been a combination of that over the last 5 years. There were a lot of companies in 22 and 21 before FTX happened that over leveraged, built out a lot of sites, and then got into a lot of trouble when they had no customer to fill that space. This industry is very hard. It's very, very difficult to run a Bitcoin mining company, whether you're Pubco, whether you're us servicing, a bunch of different clients, whether you're just a self miner that has their own site. It's a very difficult industry. It's a hard business. And that's also where the opportunity is. It's a very hard business to run. And that's been a good challenge for us to navigate that. But, we try to make it very simple for the retail customers. So they don't have to deal with any of that, but it is a very hard business. And with that, there's a lot of challenges that come up for a lot of companies. Their energy pricing may, everybody talks about fixed rate contracts and, do you have a fixed PPA and all these kind of other buzzwords. And, there's a lot of things that can happen. And really what I foresee right now, and I'm not I don't have all the answers, but in my opinion, we're seeing wholesale energy pricing across the board trending higher significantly. Now that does not affect the hosted mining client because they have a certain rate with us and that rate's never changed. So on our end, we've never changed our rates. For other companies, that may not be the case. The reason I see the industry consolidating is for the retail customer specifically, for the customer buying one machine to 500 machines, we'll call retail. Anybody buying, thousands of machines may have their own site, is a little different situation. But for the retail customer, most of our competitors are not vertically integrated. They act as third parties, and they're contracting with other companies that actually own all the infrastructure. They're selling them power at a certain rate, and they're getting a smaller spread and then upselling that to their clients. The issue with that is as wholesale energy pricing continues to increase, in my opinion, you're seeing a situation where those third parties are going to raise the pricing to the hosting operator, which eventually they just don't have a business. Their margins get compressed, or they have to raise it to their customer, and then they go out of business. So we just saw this actually a few months ago with one of our a company that's been around for a while. We had a lot of customers that had this exact situation happen, and it's happened time and time again. But specifically now, we're just seeing wholesale energy pricing creep up quite a bit. And there's different reasons that could be happening. I mean, there's kind of a mean reversion in our opinion, where everything's inflating. The everything in the economy is more expensive, and the dollar's at its lowest level in 5 years. When the dollar's cheaper, commodities are more expensive in dollars, right? So you're seeing a situation where energy pricing is more expensive in dollars at this point in time. And when that happens, obviously wholesale energy price is going to go higher. It's going to compress our business, it's going to compress everybody's business, but us buying wholesale power, wholesale energy, we can sustain that a lot more than a company that's working with a third party. So I think that's the trend that we're seeing. And I think in, my opinion, unless something changes here soon in the next 12 months, you're going to see anybody who's not vertically integrated, that does not own and operate their sites. I don't think we'll have much of a business model, in my opinion. And I think you're going to see a lot of those companies move out of business. And what you're seeing is a lot of them, they're trying to now start building sites to become vertically integrated because the writing's kind of on the wall that that's where this industry is headed. So, that's my quick kind of synopsis on why I think that this industry kind of continues to trend that way. And just over time, naturally, just the companies who have been around a long time, you mentioned other industries, and there's Verizon in the US, you have like Verizon and T-Mobile, or there's a few other ones, but everybody buys an iPhone. You have an iPhone or a Galaxy, and there's really two cell phones that people buy. So I think over time, it's just as the industry matures, naturally you just kind of have a gravitation towards a few companies over time. So
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Yeah, it's interesting to witness that in the Bitcoin mining, in the hosted Bitcoin mining space. You mentioned real estate people, and it's super interesting because I had probably like 20 or 30 people on already, maybe even more, that came from real estate, had a lot of property in there, and then came very aggressively into Bitcoin as they saw like, oh, you can do a lot of the same thing in Bitcoin and you don't have to fix the toilets. Like that. That's freaking awesome. Why do you think that there is such a huge interest from real estate people specifically into like Bitcoin mining?
Mining specifically, yeah, I think it is a tax play. Real estate for most people in the U.S. is, interest rates right now are not super attractive, but real estate in the U.S. I'm not a real estate professional by any means, but for most people, there's a tax play there, where they can write, they can do cost segregation and they can, write off the property if it's an investment property over a certain amount of years, and it's a very slow deduction over time. So we get a lot of our primary customer base is actually a lot of real estate professionals, people. We actually had a customer yesterday. They're liquidating $40 million in real estate. And as they're liquidating that, they're converting all that to Bitcoin mining. And really, it's just a tax play. They see it as a better cash flowing kind of opportunity versus real estate. In New York, I'm from New York personally. My wife's family actually owns a multifamily with a few units. And in New York, their tenant wasn't paying their bills for 5-6 months and they couldn't kick them out, right? So there's situations where you have a bad tenant. They had another tenant who destroyed one of the rooms in their house, and they had to spend a few $1,000s on maintenance and fixing some different issues there. So I think there's just a lot of work. Real estate is not as simple as the internet makes it sound, and there's a lot of work involved in maintaining these properties and having consistent tenants. There's periods where you may have no tenants at all. So I think for a lot of real estate investors, they just see it as easier. A lot of my parents, a lot of the kind of people born in the 60s, 70s, real estate is how they made money. And I think a lot of my friends and my colleagues, they kind of saw real estate as a way to, at least a few years ago, oh, I got to get into real estate. This is what my parents did. This is how we made money. And I think that's becoming less the norm at this point in time. And now people are looking for alternative ways to build businesses and make money. And I think mining I always go back to the tax side. It's becoming a lot more attractive from the hands-off nature of mining, where you can have a third party operate everything. You don't have to find the tenant. The machines are going to make Bitcoin every single day, and kind of all the maintenance, repairs, and so on and so forth are handled by us in this situation. So I think people just see it as a better. I apologize. I have somebody knocking at my door. People see this.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just.
Of course.
Give me 1 second. Sorry.
You're fine.
To handle something. They're supposed to come in an hour and they showed up early. So.
Oh, no
Okay.
worries. It happens. It's super interesting because I also always work from home. And I now found a perfect spot, where I don't even hear the clock now.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect, but I was like, if it wouldn't be here, it would be the same thing. And so it's like, for me, it's like, I do it that way.
He was knocking for about 5. I was ignoring it for a few minutes and he kept going. I was like, oh my God. I had to go out because he wasn't stopping. So, but I apologize. But, yeah, we can resume whenever you're ready.
He probably heard you talking and is like, he's in there. I know.
Yeah.
But you finished your thought. I think you were like about to say something, but
no, I was just bringing it full circle. I think just you're seeing a lot of real estate investors seeing mining as an easier business for them to enter. I think they're actually seeing it as a less risky business than real estate itself. At this point in time, at least a lot of the investors that we're seeing. I'm not saying that 100% of real estate investors see Bitcoin mining as a safer investment than real estate, but the investors that are switching from real estate to mining, they're seeing it that way, and they're liking the larger tax advantages that there are with mining versus just traditional real estate. So
yeah, no, real estate for me is just a horrible investment. Like if you look at if it depends on like how you do it, and all of a sudden so there's like a few. I'm very vocal on that real estate thing, because if you want to own your own home and you emotionally want that, that's fine. Just do that. If you anyways want it, there's no financial really angle there that you have to see. If you only want as a financial, if you only ask yourself, do I want to rent or buy, purely from an investment perspective, purely from a financial standpoint, I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to buy real estate outside of you having an amazing deal of interest rates. If you get you put 1% down and you only pay 2% of interest rates, take that off, because you have such a huge leverage on that small down payment that Bitcoin really has to outperform a lot to make good for that. So there's but most people have 20% down, and then the opportunity cost is so huge that you can put those 20% right into Bitcoin and make more with it. But everyone has to kind of make their own calculators for that. But then if you look at passive money, if you just want to park your money somewhere, real estate is never easy. You always have to comply with a lot of rules. In Austria, those socialists in our governments, they are now capping the rent, which I hate, even though I'm a renter, I don't own. So they're capping now the rent at 3%. So even if the inflation is sorry, now I got disturbed. Even if the inflation is higher, they cannot have more than the 3%, which is crazy for me. So there was my small rant about real estate, but it's a horrible decision financially. But I get it if you want to found if you want to create a family, a safe home, and all of that. Like there's an emotional side and there's a human side to real estate that might be good, but financially it rarely makes sense to buy a home. And with that, I will shut up about real estate.
I agree with you. I think for a lot of people, it depends. I think everything depends, every business. So I think with real estate specifically, you can actually, and I don't own any real estate as an investment. I own a home, which it hurt when I had to sell Bitcoin for my home, but I think it was from a quality of life standpoint, it was a good thing in my opinion for us to own a home. But investment wise, yeah, I'd be happier holding my Bitcoin. But anyway, so with real estate, I think one of the big attractive features of it is you can go to a bank and get debt financing, right? You can leverage real estate, and you can't leverage Bitcoin. You can leverage Bitcoin, you could leverage mining, but it's a lot more difficult. And the way you do that is you go to an exchange and lend on your Bitcoin, which has inherent risks. You can't go to Chase Bank or Citibank or Wells Fargo and go get a loan on your Bitcoin or go get a loan on your Bitcoin miners, right? So I think for a lot of people, real estate's kind of like the easiest path, where the bank is very comfortable with it. You can get leverage pretty easily, to go do whatever you want, really. And then I think for a lot of people just do what they know, right? So a lot of my friends and family and whatnot who were successful, they made money in real estate. So that's all they know. I'm gonna go buy this property in Florida or Texas or wherever, and I'm gonna rent it out, and it's gonna make me X, and I'm gonna spend this, and it's gonna be a great investment. I think our kids, like the newer generation, and like the generation underneath us at some point, what they're going to know is they're going to know everything digitally, whether that's Bitcoin or whatever else is around in 20 years. But it's going to be more of a digital world. And I think you're seeing the world, nobody carries cash anymore, right? Even though people, they may not own Bitcoin, they're not holding cash. They're using a credit card, they're using Apple Pay, Venmo, Zelle, whatever it might be. Nobody transacts in cash. So we've completely moved away from the dollar, whether people realize it or not. The dollar is not used at this point in time in day to day, aside from paying your electrician or your barber or something like that, right? So we've completely moved off the dollar. And if you look at it from that standpoint, this generation is a lot more digital and, probably doesn't own as many hard assets as our parents or the older generation did. And when you look at the next generation underneath us, they're going to do what they know. And what they know is going to be digital, and they're going to move towards digital assets, and hopefully Bitcoin, and I think people just do what they know. And my kids are going to know Bitcoin, and that's what they're going to do. And whatever that means, whether it's working in Bitcoin or whether it's mining Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin, whatever that means, I'm not entirely sure 20 years from now, but yeah, that's kind of my synopsis on that. So I definitely agree with you on those points as well, though. So.
Yeah, Gen Z and millennials can buy a home, so they will buy Bitcoin. It's like the whole thing, and it's great because like I think there's like different opportunities for different generations, and it's just like for we always talk, is it the boomer generation? I think it's the boomer generation in the meme that's all like, oh, like you bought a home for like 5 blueberries and now you're selling it for like 1 million or 2 million. And the same thing will apply to people in millennial or like Gen Z bracket that said like, oh yeah, look, you bought Bitcoin for like $100, or like even the $100,000 and now you're selling it for like 10 million or $100 million. And so it is interesting how every generation has their own kind of opportunities of just like parking your wealth. It's never fiat. It's never the currency. This is never the opportunity. And, but it is not the era currently to make a lot of money with real estate. I think that's the main message, to get across, here.
Yeah, I think, real estate's not going anywhere though. And I think people will continue. And I'm in the same camp and against real estate, but I mean, it's still for a lot of people a lucrative investment. If you're, like you said, if you come across a good deal and you have good rates and you're able to find tenants that are going to pay you enough money that are stable and in a good geopolitical kind of location, then it could make sense. But yeah, I think you made a statement about people can't afford a home, and so they should buy Bitcoin. I think I saw a chart the other day my brother sent to me, and it was the percentage of people that own a home and have a kid or something like that by age 30 is like at the lowest levels it's ever been at in history, which is pretty crazy. And there's a lot of different reasons that could be. But like a lot of my friends personally, they don't own homes, right? And they probably won't own a home at least where they want to live anytime soon. So maybe they have to relocate or whatever that might be. They're not buying Bitcoin. They're struggling. They're trying to figure out, how do I afford a home? And the simple answer for me is, why don't you just buy some Bitcoin? But it's not that simple for a lot of people to just take what they've worked really hard for. They're trying to come up with a certain dollar amount safely because they don't want to lose it, so they can afford a home and pay for the mortgage payments and taxes and so on and so forth. And the thought of 2 weeks ago Bitcoin dropping $20,000, when Trump announced the China tariffs, that's all they focus on. They focus on those headlines and are not focused on the long-term aspect of Bitcoin and what it is. But at the end of the day, all these people are seeing their grocery bills are more expensive. The pump, filling up their truck is more expensive. So inflation's affecting everybody. And I think a lot of people know the answer. They understand that Bitcoin's a potential solution. But a lot of people that are in that camp that don't own a home yet and really don't own a home because they can't afford it. If you can't afford a home, I don't think that group of people, which is a significant percentage of people, is just going to go rush to buy Bitcoin right now, because they see it as just too risky, and a lot of these people are blue collar people and stable kind of W-2 incomes, and they can't afford they can't stomach the volatility of an asset. Whether me and you sit here and say it's good volatility and it's volatile to the upside or not, I think that group of people is going to be very challenging to get into Bitcoin in the short term, at least. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be confusing for like it because I think a lot about like what young people are currently doing, and like why don't they own homes is very clear, because like they have not the money to do that, and they are increasingly unwilling and rightfully so to go into huge amounts of debts for that same thing. And so I'm really liking to talk with young people that are under my age. So like I'm 27, so I like to talk with people like that between like 18 and like 25. That what is their dreams? Like what do they really want? And they all have this thing that they actually want to buy a home. And so then you have to ask a question like, why don't they do that? Because they have no means towards that. And I was just asked on a Gen Z podcast, actually, what's the advice for like Gen Z, even though like, I'm also Gen Z. But I truly think if you're like 18 years old, your best shot at having a home when you're 30 is buying Bitcoin now. And it's the weirdest thing. Obviously, like work on your skill, like on your income, like that's the biggest leverage you have. Your time and your income and your skills level is always the most important thing, but that's a whole another topic. But then everything that is surplus, everything that you have kind of like worked on top of that, that you don't want to invest in your education, that you don't want to invest in like acquiring skills or like making companies, this should be in Bitcoin. And it's very easy for me, and maybe even like in Bitcoin mining, but like it should be in the Bitcoin ecosystem, like 100% in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier for an 18-year-old kid to buy Bitcoin versus if you're 32 and you have a newborn and you're struggling to pay rent, it's going to be very hard to take whatever you have left over and put into Bitcoin, right? So definitely, I think we've kind of seen the same thing where if you don't have kids yet and you're still living at home or whatever else it might be, I would agree with you. That's probably from an investing side of things, buying Bitcoin is probably one of the best ways that you can potentially purchase a home when you're 30. If you're acquiring a certain amount of Bitcoin, and whatever that amount is, I'm not exactly sure, but or it's building a business or advancing in your career or whatever else it might be. But it's definitely, those all are going to complement each other from the time you're 18 to 30 to hopefully where you can afford a home. But I think the goal should be to accumulate one Bitcoin for everybody. If I was 18 and I could, have had the mindset of, or somebody mentoring me to say, hey, you should just put, $50 of every paycheck into Bitcoin or whatever it might have been, I'd probably have a lot more Bitcoin, even just doing a small DCA, 12 years ago.
Absolutely, very, very, very true. I want to get into a few more things actually, but our time is already running out. One thing that I'm curious about is also like the kind of the future that you are kind of seeing for Bitcoin mining. It's so interesting for me to look at the past of Bitcoin mining and how it evolved, of how people mined 50 Bitcoin per day on their like old laptop, and now you have to invest so much energy and money to like just to get to 1 Bitcoin a day, which is like it already a lot, but like you need to invest like a lot in resources. Where do you see Bitcoin mining going? Where does like the future of Bitcoin mining kind of lay?
Sure. Yeah, I think good question. I think specifically now you're seeing a pretty big transition from Bitcoin mining to AI for a lot of companies. An AI data center is about 30 times more expensive to build versus a Bitcoin mining data center. So you're looking at a tier 5 data center with 99.99999% uptime versus a Bitcoin mining data center, which is going to be more of a it's not going to have as much redundancy and all the bells and whistles that an AI data center is going to need, right? So when we're seeing that, you look at a lot of these public companies, you see their press releases and whatnot, and they're transitioning to AI. Core Scientific is I believe at this point torn down most of their Bitcoin mining sites, or they're in the process of, and transitioning all that to AI. You see Riot, talking about it. I think CleanSpark maybe mentioned something the other day, Marathon. So you're seeing all these companies chase this like AI play, and that's another conversation, and whether that's a bubble or not, and what happens, I'm not entirely sure. But I think the future of Bitcoin mining is actually less dense over time, from a total capacity standpoint, because you're seeing a lot of these players transitioning to AI for different possible reasons. So I think, we were talking about the network hash rate growth earlier in this conversation. I think that's another diminishing factor that you're going to see, where hash rate's not going to come on as quickly, because some of the existing infrastructure and newer capacity that's going to come online is going to move to AI, and just other data centers. And with that being said, the Bitcoin network's not going to be able to grow as fast due to that. So, I think you're still going to continue to see a lot of miners expanding, and you're seeing a lot of new investment into mining. Most of the conversations we're having currently with public and private companies that we're building sites for 2026 and 2027 is they want the stipulation in their agreements that they can transition the Bitcoin mining site to an AI data center. That's not a stipulation with us. That's a stipulation with like the local utility and the community, basically saying, hey, we're going to start mining Bitcoin, but in 3 to 4 or 5 years, we're going to move this to AI, right? And when you look at it through that scope, and all the big players are, looking at all their future expansion with an AI kind of lens, whether they transition or not, they want that option to pivot that way. I see the future of Bitcoin mining from like a retail perspective a lot stronger, because a lot of the big players are now chasing, the new pretty girl, on the block, basically. And that's kind of the AI play right now. So, I would say you're going to continue to see growth in the sector, but it's not the hottest thing on the block at this point in time for every billion-dollar company to invest in, which creates more opportunity for smaller companies and individuals that want to get involved in mining. So, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but from a profitability standpoint over time, it's very hard to say. You talk about different halvings every 4 years, and what does Bitcoin look like? And if you have a long-term thesis on Bitcoin, you believe the price is going higher, then I think mining is definitely an industry that's not going anywhere, in the next decade for sure. What does it look like in 20, 30 years? I have no idea. But, you still have a lot of companies that are spending a lot of money and investing in the infrastructure to build out these mining sites, and they're looking at mining very much so as a 5, 10, 15-year business. And we very much so are as well. So I think the industry is here to stay, but I think 10, 20 years from now, we'll kind of see what that looks like, and we can revisit that question then. So
it's interesting that it is still growing at the rate that it is, even though it's not the trendy thing to do, and even though it's already so big. And there are, I don't know if you're aware of Ratoshi and his books, and he wrote a book about the future of, it's basically a sci-fi book, that is all about Bitcoin, but doesn't really like talk about Bitcoin. And so he doesn't even mention the word Bitcoin, but he talks about this time chain currency, and it's basically Bitcoin. He even talked about this ships that are called Halfini and like all of those things. So it's clearly, it's a love letter to the Bitcoin community without mentioning Bitcoin once in the book. And he talks about that theory that Bitcoin mining will expand till it's like almost all of the energy in the world, because we will have so much surplus energy in the world that with only 1%, only a few percent of the energy of the world, you can basically get everything done. So you can feed all the people, you can light up all the lights, you can get all the AI data centers that you can power. And then with the rest of it, like what are you doing with energy that you don't need? You basically plug it into Bitcoin mining, so you make money with the energy, because that's the only thing that is expandable in the in infinite amounts. AI data centers at some point we just don't need one more, because like maybe the demand is not as high. And so this was an interesting one. And then the second thing that I wanted to throw in there is that I hear more and more energy producers going into Bitcoin, but also Bitcoiners, miner, also getting more and more into energy producing, which is a kind of an interesting trend. When you talk previously about vertically integrating, it's like, yeah, what if you can produce the energy, have the mining side, and do like everything like already in once? It's an interesting concept of Bitcoin mining companies getting into the game of producing the energy themselves, to even be not even dependent on the utility companies in the future. I mean, those are just like starting currently, but like those two things I heard and I'm currently looking at, and I'm like, oh, that sounds exciting. I don't know how if you have like opinions on that.
Yeah, I think there's, for us specifically, we're on grid. It'll be very, very difficult for us to be truly vertically integrated where we're producing our own energy. When you look at these utility companies, I'm sure I've seen cases of companies maybe doing it on their own, but most of these companies want to find a partner, a third party that are going to operate. And I think every business is really good at doing what they do. And like for us, we're focused on offering the service we're offering to customers to make Bitcoin mining simple. A utility company is going to be very good at doing everything they need to do to, keep the lights on, basically, for their community and the businesses that they're working with. So most of these utilities don't want to do it themselves. They want somebody to come in and be able to do it. So I don't really think you're going to see much of that unless, you've seen some companies who like they own all the generation and, they've walked into some really good situations. But the majority of Bitcoin mining companies and utility companies, they're going to work symbiotically together. It's not going to be like, we're going to go buy the utility company or the utility company is going to mine Bitcoin on their own. So I think that's specifically for on-grid. Off-grid, obviously you control the generation and there's different potential challenges and things there. But, for most of these larger sites that are on-grid, there's going to be a symbiotic relationship between the utility and the mining company itself. I don't know if you truly see like across the board vertical integration from the generation side of things anytime soon, at least.
I also think so. Really cool. Fun things. Well, I have one question to ask each and every one of my new guests on the podcast. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can we learn from me besides Bitcoin? Good question. That was the one question you should have asked me before we started the podcast, so I could have thought about it.
I never do that. I don't like prepared guests.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of something interesting. I don't really have a whole lot.
Maybe baseball.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't want to learn anything from me. You don't want to look at my stats, but No, I mean, what can you learn from me? There's nothing that would be too insightful for any of your listeners that I could probably hit on that, aside from Bitcoin, that they'd really care to listen to. I could talk about all the things I like to do in my free time, but, I might have to come back to that one here. It's probably the worst answer you've ever gotten on that question. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I usually have an answer for everything. So that one's going to live rent free in my head for a little bit.
I love that.
I could,
that's
yeah,
a good outcome.
yeah. I don't have a good answer for you. I could teach your viewers how to do a Rubik's cube. Maybe it would be,
I
something.
love that. I actually learned that too, but I forgot it again. It's like I can do the one side, I can do and the first row, and from the second row I can do a little bit. And in a good day I can actually do the second row also. But like that's fine. Are you fast in this?
It's a little less interesting now because the internet, everybody can do everything. So when I learned it, it would have been a little cooler, in my opinion, before the internet was, and AI could tell you how to do everything. So, but yeah. I don't have one. I don't have one nearby. But if we talk again, I'll have one next to me. We'll see if I can get it done in under
I
a minute.
took the fun out of so many things. Like I think like for example, with like playing chess, I love playing chess, but honestly, I'm always like, why do I do this when I know AI can beat me if it really wants to? It's not like, shit, like I can never be the best in this game because there's always AI. It just like beats me every single time. And so I don't know. Yeah, sometimes AI takes the fun out of things, but I still love playing chess. I still do it almost every day.
At the next conference, we'll have to play. They usually have, and like kind of like the lunch areas, they have some chess and board games. So we'll see. We'll see how good you are.
Absolutely. Let's do it. And you will hate you might hate the end routine question. In the end routine, we always have a question where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And this is one question that I'm like, oh shit, like if I got that question, like I would be, I don't even know what to say. You have the right to not answer always. And the question is, do you believe the USA fought on the correct side of World War II?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that differently. So in the US specifically, there's certain history that you learn in, elementary school and as, pre-K, first grade, middle school, high school. And there's certain history you don't learn about. So I'm going to give you an example. So I was just in Africa with my wife for our honeymoon, and we ended our trip in Rwanda. And we learned about the Rwandan genocide, which was a terrible, genocide. And I had never learned about it in, I'm 29. I never learned about it in any history book or anything else, in school. We never learned about this genocide. And I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 people died, were killed per day for like 100 days or 6 months or something like that from what I recall. And I guess the point being is, I think it's very difficult. I'm not going to answer your question directly, but I think it's very difficult in the present age where media is biased on both sides, conservatively or on the other side as well. And on our honeymoon, actually, we're on a safari, and when you're riding the safaris, you could have a private vehicle or you could be in a vehicle with a few other guests. So we're in a vehicle with a few other guests, and one of our guests was a pretty high up reporter with CNN, actually, in like 2000. And she was telling us, the media was way different in 2000 than it is today. And what she was saying was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when you reported on things, you had to report facts. You could only report facts. You couldn't report your opinion. And whether that's true or not, I don't know, but she was very, very high up and, worked in the White House and worked everywhere else. And the point being now is opinions kind of dominate, a lot of the media, even in Bitcoin mining, right, where there's not always facts. So to answer your question, in the school system now, there's certain topics you learn about and certain you don't learn about, right? And I think it's very hard to make educated decisions on, what is right and what is wrong. I had family who fought in World War II, and, growing up, I assume that's what's right. I would not be in a educated enough position to answer like what is the right side and what's the wrong side. I think all war is bad, and all war kind of comes back to the money being broken, right? And you fix the money, you fix a lot of problems, right? So I don't have an opinion on that question right now. But growing up, I think that we were taught that was the right side of things. You had on our end, you had a U.S. naval base bombed, and there was no choice but to go to war, right? So I would assume the answer is yes, but I would honestly just say I'm not educated enough on that question to make a educated opinion on that, because I don't know the full story of both sides, I guess. So without having that full scope, like a truly unbiased full scope of both sides, it's hard for me to answer that. I also don't know if I want that in this interview, because I don't know if that'll get me backlash, like to a certain extent, because there's different opinions on different things, but that's fine. So, but yeah, I think it is very difficult to make educated opinions on a lot of things nowadays, because especially when you're in the Bitcoin space, you see it, right? Like we are right? Like we're right. What we're doing is right, and Bitcoin's works, and Bitcoin mining works. Then you see the other side. It's like, well, you're destroying the environment, all this other stuff and all this nonsense. And you kind of see that in all areas of the media. So when I gave the example of the Rwandan genocide, the reason I brought that up was there was a genocide that I never learned about in 29 years of school that was pretty substantial. I think millions of people dying is something that we should have learned about growing up, and that's why I say that makes me question a lot of the history I've learned growing up, because I don't know what's truly factual and what history is not being presented to me and what is, right? So that's a whole nother rabbit hole of personal conspiracies of what information is fed through the schooling system and what's not, and I don't know all the answers there, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So
way better than I would have answered that question. That's for sure. And it's also interesting because I thought about that, how different history will be perceived now that we are filming everything from every single angle. Like if something happens on the internet, there's usually like 50 videos coming after that from different angles. Like I think there's many different examples of like many different things that happen, from like very small, like funny things to like serious things of like shootings and all of that. And where you see it like on one small camera, and then like 2 hours later, there are already like 50 different angles of the same thing. And so that's for me an interesting development, where we didn't had that in 100 years ago, 200 years ago, but we have it now. So how will we differently look back in history now? Because it's always said like, oh, the winners, the winners are writing history. It's the sentence goes differently, but something like that. And so who is writing history if we are documenting everything from every angle and so many different perspectives and so many different media outlets, so many different voices on the internet? I mean, do everything that you say is controversial to 50 different groups. and so there's like so many different opinions on that. So I'm really curious on looking back. Like I hope I would love to be like 200, 300 years old to see how people are reporting the reality that we are living now in 2025. That would be so freaking awesome to see. And I think having so many like cameras running around and filming everything is a huge part of history itself, and how it is now different to report things, because as you said, now I think it's now way harder to like fake things. But yeah, interesting last segment of the podcast, I guess. Before I let you go though, where can people find you, ask you questions, and maybe also reach out to Simple Mining?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Simplemining.io is our website. So you can go there to get a lot of educational information on Bitcoin mining. If you're interested in mining, you can set up a call with our team right on our website. I'm not very big on Twitter or anything. LinkedIn's a good place for me. So I think just my name is my LinkedIn profile. So Nick Garland. But yeah, if you're interested in learning more about the company, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, our website, Simple Mining IO on Twitter, simplemining.io for our website. So, but yeah, Robin, really appreciate you having me here, and it's been a lot of fun. So, I wish I had a good question for you to stump you here, but I don't have any in mind here. So, but yeah, really appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to seeing you soon. So.
Thank you so much, Nick, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.